G'day guys, welcome back to the Boundary Riders Podcast, the podcast for the true footy fan. Now, it won't sound as good as how I made it the first time because I went to record this, went for about 4 minutes, made a beautiful intro, it was probably the best I've ever done, and I realised the mic wasn't connected. So, it would have been me sitting there with my mouth moving for 5 minutes. But anyway, we got back to it. Luckily, I noticed before I did the whole thing, or else I probably wouldn't have done one this week, because I'm going to be honest, this episode's going to be all about the trade period, and if I had to repeat it all again, I think I would have killed myself. But anyway, nonetheless, we've had a big trade period so far. A lot of trades have been done already, which is a little bit surprising for the trade period. Usually they are saved towards the end of the period. However, we've got a lot done so far. Since the trade video that we put out on Friday, I believe, we've had a few trades or free agency moves still be completed. We have Jay Gresham, who has gone to the Bombers. We've had Tom Fullerton, who's gone to the Demons. Tyler Brockman, who's gone to the Eagles. Bigal Nyong, who's gone to the Kangaroos. Lockie Schultz finally got to the Pies, and Liam Henry has gone to the Saints. So those are all the completed moves so far, basically since we last did the trade video. In the last podcast, we did talk about a lot of trades that were happening. One of them was Taylor Adams and stuff, and Brodie Grundy. We basically saw that in the last trade video. They've both been done. Sydney have done very well in this trade period to bring in all those players. The Bombers, they've done well to bring in all the players. I just don't know how much they're going to change the club, if I'm being honest. I think Collingwood have done really well in this trade period just to pick up their Lockie Schultz. I think that's a massive get for them. We'll talk about that a little bit later because I want to talk a little bit more about Fremantle. But yeah, a lot of good trades being done so far. A lot of clubs gaining their players. Port Adelaide, I will say, are one club right on the edge right now. If they don't complete these trades that they want to get done, I think it's a terrible trade period for them because they were promised to be one of the best clubs in the trade period, and they've really, really petered off. They haven't been able to complete really any of their trades so far, except for a pick swap, which was right at the start. But anyway, there are still a few trades still to be done. We have Asada Radically to go to Port, Mabior Chol to go to the Hawks, Dow to go to the Saints, Dersman to go to the Bombers, so Thatcher and Jordan Sweet to go to the Power, Jack Gunston, which we'll be talking a little bit more about in a minute, will be going to the Hawks, or wanting to go to the Hawks. McAdam to the Demons, D'Ambrosio to the Hawks, Hollands to the Blues, Caulfield, I think hasn't been done yet, to go to the Bulldogs. I can't really remember that. I'm pretty sure that hasn't been done yet, but I'll have to check that later. Jack Billings still wants to move away from the Saints. Jacob Kaczynski wants to go to the Tigers, and Fantasia wants to go to the GWS Giants. Basically, those are all being done so far. Now, the first thing I wanted to talk about was the Jack Gunston story. This just came out of the blue, if I'm being honest. 12 months ago, went to the Lions. I believe it was to try and chase another premiership. They got to the grand final this year. Obviously, he was injured, so he wasn't able to play in the grand final. But now, all of a sudden, he wants to leave and go back to the Hawks. I don't think it's even been 12 months since he moved. So, I almost thought this was fake when I first saw it. There's been a lot of fake trade news so far in this trade period, and I thought this was right up there with it. But this is in fact true, and it does look like that the Hawks are what Jack Gunston wants to be at. He wants to be back there next year. I don't think we've ever seen a trade go like this. I don't think we've ever seen a player go from one club to another, go to another club, and then come back to the same club within 12 months. I don't think we've ever seen that. That is so surprising that Jack Gunston wants to go back to the Hawks. And if I'm being honest, if I'm Hawthorn, I'm definitely prioritising the Chol trade and the D'Ambrosio trade before Jack Gunston. Because Jack Gunston has been a very, very good player for the Hawks in the past. Obviously, he's I think, triple premiership player for them. Was a very good forward when he was there. But now he's getting quite old. He didn't really have a very good year for the Lions when he was playing. I think he had a couple of good games. But you can see throughout the year, Sam Mitchell was definitely building on that young list that they do have, trying to bring in some young tools this season, with Mabior Chol being one of them. Jack Gunston, I think, would be good for them. I'm not going to say he's not going to be. I think he definitely adds something to their forward line, which I think they kind of missed this year. But if I'm being honest, I think Mabior Chol's definitely the more priority to get to the Hawks rather than Jack Gunston. I do think he will be getting to the Hawks by the end of the trade period. I don't think he'll be at the Lions next year. I'd actually be very surprised. I'd actually be very interested to see what would happen if Jack Gunston is still at the Lions next year, if he would even play or if he would just retire. I'd be very interested to see what happens there. I do think Jack Gunston will get to the Hawks, but I was just so surprised to see this. I just don't know why. I don't think there's been any news as to why Jack Gunston wants to go back to Hawthorn. I mean, why leave and then go back 12 months later? I mean, I get the Lions got to the grand final, but they didn't win it. So, I mean, they're still going to be up there next year. It's very interesting that his priorities have changed so quickly in the space of about 12 months' time that Jack Gunston now wants to go back to the Hawks where he won all his premierships from. I'll be very interested to see how that plays out. I do think it will get done, but I don't think it should be their priority for the Hawks at this stage. I think they should be prioritising D'Ambrosio and Chol, and then if they can get Gunston in the next couple of days, they'd do so. This will be coming out on a Tuesday, so the next 2 days will be the trade period. And we'll just quickly mention as well, I'll mention it at the end, but yeah, we will be doing a live stream for the trade period the last couple of hours. You know how they like to do the trade radio, whatever, you can kind of see the live vision of the trade room in the last couple of hours just to see the last couple of trades be done. Me and my brother will be doing that on Wednesday, which will be tomorrow for people watching. So I think we'll be starting around 5:30, so just make sure to turn on the notification bell to get notified on the next video. But that'll basically be the last sort of talking point about the trade period. Well, actually, no, we're going to be doing a couple of videos like talking about the best 22 for next season for the team so far, basically after the trade period, and basically grading the team on how they did in the trade period as well. I think that'll be very interesting to look at. So that will be basically the videos coming up after the trade period. But after that as well with the podcast, just a little mention. The podcast going forward, basically until the next of the AFL season, will be classified as this will be the Boundary Riders Podcast, and we will be still talking about football a little bit, but it'll be sort of like the off season. So we'll be pushing it back to probably a Wednesday or a Thursday, and my brother will join me for the podcast, and we'll be talking about a couple of other sports as well. I thought I'd mention that a little bit earlier in the video, in the podcast, just so, I don't know, some people kind of just drift away and leave. But anyway, I did want to talk a little bit about some quote-unquote false trade rumours that we've seen come out in this trade period. I know people are going to sit there and say that Clayton Oliver was going to go, and then, they convinced him to say, I think there was a lot less to that story than what they portrayed. There's also been Tom Hawkins. We talked about it a little bit in the trade video. Tom Hawkins was being rumoured to potentially leave. Maybe not this year, but next year, because he was having some bad talks with Geelong. But all of a sudden, in the space of 48 hours, Tom Hawkins got announced from the Cats that he extended into an 18th season. What a shocker. Basically, I think it was me, not my brother, but no, he did mention it. But we all said that Tom Hawkins was going to be staying at the Cats. This was just such a bullcrap story. Like I said in it, the Cats weren't going to be, willing to give Tom Hawkins a contract straight off the bat because he's 34, 35 years of age now. Or 36 even. He could actually be 36. They're not going to go and give this guy a fresh contract, especially because he's 36 and he did have a lot of injuries at the start of this year. I don't know why. I mean, I know why. They were trying to get headlines to get clickbaited, but whatever. But there was no way in hell that Tom Hawkins is going to leave. I never believed that for 1 second. And for people who did, look, I feel sorry for them because they're believing these journalists who posting the truth when they're just a bunch of bullshit. And including that, the West Coast Eagles have had a couple of players mentioned to be talked about involved in trades. One's been Elliot Yeo, one's been Jack Darling, and another has been Liam Duggan. All of them are not looking to be traded. Now look, I get why these players have been mentioned for a trade potentially because, they're older players at West Coast. They're probably they may not be there for the next premiership, or it's going to be a long time for them, and maybe they wanted success in the now. But West Coast, to their credit, and I'm not going to give much credit to West Coast this season because they've been dismal, and even online they've been dismal. I remember when the DeGoey stuff came out, they mentioned something, one of the players, and they had to there's some reason apologised on Twitter. But nonetheless, I think this was actually very good from them because they came out on West Coast Twitter page and basically said I'll just read it. Media speculation about the club discussing trades involving Elliot Yeo, Jack Darling and Liam Duggan are all completely unfounded and untrue. Congratulations, West Coast. You win this week's award for Club Media Award. Giants have been winning it for the majority of the year, but I give it to you for this week because that is great. And I think Melbourne should have done this, to be honest. I get there may have been a little bit of news on it. But West Coast, I really appreciate this. Coming out immediately saying, this is not true. Don't believe it for 1 second. These guys will be there next year. I think that's a great thing to do from the West Coast Eagles, to just come out and say these 3 players are senior players at the club and they are not going anywhere. Great to see from the Eagles, and I hope this is something that clubs do in the future, because a lot of these fake stories coming out throughout this trade period, there have been a lot more, I believe, than we've seen in the past. And I think it shows that, one, this trade period basically hasn't had a lot of big players leave. We've seen Brodie Grundy and I guess Taylor Adams probably being the two, not surprises. Taylor Adams would have been a surprise. Brodie Grundy's probably been the best player to leave their club. But we've seen so much speculation throughout, even before the trade period, with Bailey Smith wanting to go to Hawthorn. That never eventuated. And look, he may go next year, but I think that just the trade period hasn't had enough big fish, big names to grab headlines, that they've tried to pluck little tiny bits of information like Clayton Oliver having a disciplinary meeting, and then all of a sudden spinning that into he wants to be traded or they're going to trade him. So I just think that that's really good from the West Coast Eagles to come out, flat out deny that this is going to happen, and, show. I mean, I think this is great for their fans as well, to show that these players are there for the long haul, and they just want to keep this club together and try and rebuild. And look, I don't think West Coast, to be honest, on my side, I think that at least Elliot Yeo, at least Jack Darling should be traded out, if I'm being honest. But I do like the fact that West Coast is standing by their, thoughts online and saying, the stuff that's coming out in the media about our players is untrue. I love to see that. And the media, speculation of all this trade period needs to be called out by the clubs. I don't think they should just let it simmer there, because all that does is make them have somewhat more credibility, which I don't think it does personally, but I think other people would see that as, the teams aren't coming out and saying that these players aren't being traded, so maybe they are going to be traded. And it's like, well, no, it just means that the clubs don't want to come out and give any sort of, quality to this crap journalism. I honestly think Geelong should have came out and said, Tom Hawkins isn't leaving yet. We're still talking and negotiating with his contract, and he's still got a year to go. So we're not exactly signing him today. And I just think that was crap, that Tom Hawkins' talk for a week was, he could be leaving to Melbourne, or teams are looking at Tom Hawkins. And it was 3 days later and he re-signed. And then the media just go dead silent on it, like they did with the Clayton Oliver stuff. And by the way, I saw the stuff this week about Clayton Oliver going to hospital, and I think that's terrible. I don't know the exact story. They do say he fell over. I don't know if that's true. I'm going to take their word for it, but I don't know. I just love the Tom Morris turnaround of hounding all the last week or so before this thing happening. He's leaving, he's having disciplinary meetings. It's now, he's either got to shape up or ship out. And then all of a sudden he goes to hospital. Spare a thought for Clayton Oliver. Hopefully everything's okay. All thoughts are with him. We all hope he's doing good. Shut up, Tom, you tossbag. You fucking suck. I hate that guy. He is such a wanker. These AFL media personalities want to talk about the mental health of players, and then all of a sudden when they can grab a little hair of a story and then go with it, they're more than happy to, who gives a fuck about their bloody mental health? We're going to chuck them straight under the bus to get a good story out. Fuck you, Tom, you wanker. You don't give a fuck. And don't act like you do, because you're a wanker, mate. And he's a Demons supporter too. If I'm a Demons supporter, and if I'm a Demons player, and he comes up to me and says, hey, can I have an interview? I would give him the finger and tell him to fuck off. And honestly, I know people gave Luke Beveridge shit for Tom Morris having a go, or asking him a question. I think it was throughout this year. And at the time, I thought it was a bit rude. But now I think, and I don't really like Luke Beveridge, but I think good on him. Fuck Tom Morris. He's such an asshole. One of the worst people in the trade media. Not all media of the footy, but trade media, he is probably the worst and one of the I hate the most. And I don't hate many people, but for the way that he's so two-faced, and that's just fucking such schoolgirl shit. I like you. Behind his back, I fucking hate him. Fuck you, Tom, you wanker. And I think I've said that a couple of weeks now. I think we should have a Tom Morris. We'll call the next year's Boundary Riders medal the Tom Morris medal. No, actually, no, we're not going to do that because that means it's a bad award. Maybe we'll give it the worst player or the most embarrassing story or something of the year, the Tom Morris award. That would actually be quite funny. Maybe we'll do that. But before we get into some news, I want to talk a little bit about Fremantle in a minute. But I just want to talk about the big news recently that we've heard about Jamara Ugle-Hagan. It seems that there's been a lot of news, a lot of speculation about Ugle-Hagan potentially going to be offered a massive contract from the Swans, maybe Collingwood, next year. They've been saying that, obviously Aaron Norton was being offered $11 million by the Swans for 10 years. That Jamara Ugle-Hagan's going to be offered that. I think Lee Montagna even said, why wouldn't he be? He's probably a generational talent, which I kind of get. I know a lot of people are comparing him to Buddy Franklin, and, I kind of get that as well. On the Swans' point of view, I honestly don't think the Swans should do it, and I'll tell you why. I think the Swans have got enough tall forwards as it is, that losing one of these guys could potentially backfire. I think we've seen with even a Toby Nankervis type for the Tigers when we got Buddy Franklin. I'm not saying that Sydney shouldn't have got Buddy Franklin. I think overall that trade worked out well for the Swans. But at the end of the day, there were a lot of times in that period where Sydney needed a ruckman, and Toby Nankervis would have been a good type for it. We saw in that golden run that the Tigers had, Toby Nankervis was one of the best players, and he was so influential for them. He's a very good clearance ruckman. He's a very good ruckman. Even if he's a little bit of a fuckwit every now and then, putting players down behind the ball and all that sort of shit. At the end of the day, he's a very good ruckman. And that could have been something that Sydney could have worked off of, because we had to lose players like Tim Membry and a lot of Sydney players through that period because we had to pay Buddy Franklin's wage. And again, I think Buddy Franklin was a great acquisition to the Swans. And who knows, maybe if the Swans did pick up Ugle-Hagan, he would potentially take us to the next premiership. But I think that Sydney have Hayden McLean right now, Joel Amati, Logan McDonald as the three tools. As long as they can hold Logan McDonald, let's say if he doesn't go, because I know there's been a little bit of speculation that he could go to Fremantle, and a lot of talk that Fremantle are trying to get him over in the next couple, they'll be talking about him in the next 12 months to potentially go for him. But if those three stay together next year, let's say this is 12 months' time, and Jamara Ugle-Hagan's, getting offers left, right, and centre, and the Swans are going to, potentially looking at him. I don't think they should. That's my thoughts on it. I don't think the Swans should be pushing for a Jamara Ugle-Hagan trade, just because I think that we've got that sort of position sewn up. If Logan McDonald was to leave, I would say Sydney 100% should throw that money at him. I honestly think he could be worth that much. Now, I think he's had the form behind him, especially in the last 12 months or so, that he's shown the signs that he could definitely be one of the best key forwards in the comp. But at the moment, I just think the Swans have a really good set forward line. I think as well that another pre-season with all three of these guys working together, McLean, Amati, and McDonald working all together, could definitely build this forward line into something very, very strong in 2024 for the Swans. And you got to remember as well that Buddy Franklin was at the Swans, all the way until mid-year when he got injured. So these three guys never really played together in the same team until really the end of the year. So, there were times when Sydney, couldn't try this three-pronged forward line because one, Amati was injured for a lot of it when Buddy Franklin wasn't there at the end. So it was Logan McDonald and just Hayden McLean. And Hayden McLean a lot of the time was playing in the ruck as well. So these guys have never really played this three-pronged forward line, which I think can work. Because I think that Logan McDonald can play between the 50s. I think he can take good contested marks along with Hayden McLean. I think Joel Amati's a very good player in the 50. I think he's a very good leading target, and he's also a very good pack mark. And I think, like I said, Hayden McLean, he's a very good contested mark, but he can also go into the ruck, which gives Brodie Grundy that little tiny bit of rest that he will need. And, I think that's where they can build from. That's just my thoughts on the Jamara Ugle-Hagan stuff. If there's any Swan supporters listening to this podcast, make sure to let me know down below what you think of that whole situation about, Jamara Ugle-Hagan talk. Do you think that Sydney should just go for him no matter what? Or if you think that maybe I have a good point, I don't know. Just let me know. I'm happy to hear suggestions. I always like your guys' feedback as well. I try to read every single comment. One thing I wanted to talk about as well is Fremantle. Now, they're kind of a forgotten club, if I'm being honest. No one really talks about Fremantle at all. I'm going to be honest. Who talks about Fremantle much at all? Until this trade period now where Liam Henry's gone, Lachie Schultz is gone. And in the past 6 years, I've actually got a little thing here. This is from AFL Trade On over on Instagram. They're very good, actually. Go make sure to follow them. But in the past 6 years, the Dockers have traded out Liam Henry, Lachie Schultz, Akers, Lobb, Logue, Meek, Tucker, Chera, Hogan, Brad Hill, Langdon, or Ed Langdon, Lachie Neale, Harley Ballock, Crozier, and Weller. Now, I'm gonna put a little like asterisk against Griffin, Logue, and Tucker because they're playing for North Melbourne, and plus, I'm gonna put an asterisk just against them. That's just my thoughts. Akers has been better away from Freo. Lobb hasn't, so Lobb's won. Meek, I think, has been probably pretty good at the Hawks. Chera has been better at Carlton. Hogan's been better at the Giants. Hill's been better at the Saints. Langdon's been better at the Demons. Obviously, Lachie Neale's been better at the Lions. And Lachie Weller's been better at the Gold Coast. I get why they traded him out, because they got Brayshaw. So that's kind of, again, an asterisk. But only, really, Ballock and Lobb, out of those players listed, have done worse since leaving the Dockers. Really. I'd give Logue kind of a same, Tucker a same, and Ballock obviously retired, and Crozier. He did well for the first couple of years. Now he's kind of petered off a little bit. But yeah, Freo are trading out so many players that are very good. And I also want to mention the fact that the trade that Fremantle accepted for Lachie Schultz and Liam Henry, why are they giving them away for basically nothing? Liam Henry was a pick 9 in a couple of years ago in the draft. They got a future second round pick, the Dockers, and a future 4th. Sorry, basically Liam Henry went for a future second round pick. Why did this take so long? If the Saints said, we will give you a future second rounder, and Fremantle are going to accept that, St Kilda are laughing out the door. How the hell did they get him for that? People were saying it was going to be a top 15 pick, and now, basically, he went for a future second rounder. If I'm Fremantle, I'm fucking ropeable that this guy, who, could be a very good wingman in the next couple of years, has just gone for a future second round pick, when he was a pick 9 a couple of years ago. And he's shown signs that he's going to be a very good wingman, Liam Henry. I can't believe when I saw that today that he went for that lower pick. I thought at least it'd be a late first round pick from Freo, or an early second rounder this year. But to basically give away a future second from St Kilda, where that's going to be what? That's not going to be in the low 20s. That's going to be high 20s into the 30s. Is that what they really think that Liam Henry was worth? Why did it take so long? Why did it take till now? This should have been done really early on in the trade period. But anyway, the one that I'm more angry about, I'm not even a Freo fan, and I'm angry on their behalf. But Lachie Schultz was given up for a second round pick, which was pick 34, and a future first round pick for Collingwood next year. So basically, let's say that's between 14 and 18. Sort of at this stage. Now, of course, there's going to be father-son picks next year. There's going to be compensation picks to North Melbourne, which we're probably going to get next year. I can't believe Freo let him go for that. He has kicked, how many goals has he kicked in the past? Since 2020, Lachie Schultz has kicked 97 goals for Fremantle, which is 5 goals better than Matt Taberner, and 97 goals in 3 years doesn't seem like much. But this is Fremantle, you got to remember. Fremantle have one of the worst attacking teams on record. Basically, since Ross, I don't remember when Fremantle have been a high-scoring team ever. So they've let go their best forward of the past 3 years for basically, let's say, pick 34 and pick 14. Let's be honest, we kind of think Collingwood are going to be top 4 next year as well. I don't really see them plummeting. So, I can't believe Fremantle's dealings here. They've got a couple of picks. Maybe they are stocking up for Logan McDonald next year. Maybe they are. Sorry, that's my dog in the background. I'm just going to mention it now. Sorry. But I'm not going to stop because I'm on a roll here. But the fact that maybe they are saving him up for Logan McDonald, I don't know. But it seems like next year they are just planning on finishing in the bottom 4. They're losing they're probably their only real goal source now. Michael Walters is getting up there. Frederick seems very inconsistent. Unless he's going to come on in spades, I don't know where that's going to come from. They've let go Liam Henry, which was probably their future for a wingman. He's gone. Blake Acres obviously gone last year. Look how well he went for Carlton. I can't believe they just let him go for that much. I honestly thought Fremantle were going to hold Lachie Schultz to his contract, and they just let him go for a bag of chips. Now, I know people can sit there and say, oh, pick 34 and, next year's first round pick isn't that bad. No way in hell is that pick going to be inside the top 15, in my opinion. Now, look, if Collingwood finish 5th, which would be 14th at this stage, like I said, there could be compensation picks. There's definitely going to be, father-son picks as well inside that top. I think Levi Ashcroft comes in next year, I believe, for Brisbane. So he'll be able to get picked up by the Lions. So that's one back already, basically, because he'll be going in the first couple. So that pushes one back already. So basically, they're not getting a pick inside the first 15. This guy has been their top scorer over the past 3 years. And remember, let's add 40 goals, honestly, to Lachie Schultz's total if he was in any team above Fremantle this year. Honestly, because every single other team, maybe except for St Kilda, because they're not really an attacking team, any team above them this year, Fremantle, he's kicking at least 130 goals over the last couple of years. He'd be kicking 30, 40 goals a season. And I bet you, next season, if he doesn't get injured, he'll be kicking 40-plus goals for Collingwood. I can't believe Freo let him go for that much. And I get the frustration from Fremantle fans because they saw that Lachie Schultz wanted to request a trade, and all the comments were, we need to be tougher as a club. We've got to stop being a mediocre club. And I 100% agree. How can they let a guy go that's this good, who's contracted for something that's very well unders? Very well unders. Collingwood could have easily given up something more than that, and I would have taken it. If it was for 2 first-rounders, I would have even done that. That was way unders for Lachie Schultz. I bet you, this is me right now, he's going to be kicking at least 40-plus goals, and for 40-plus goals next year. And for a small forward, that is almost elite. So, well, I would say it's elite. So, yeah, I think Lachie Schultz is going to have a massive year. Great pickup by Collingwood. Don't have any problem with how Collingwood dealt with this. They did brilliantly. Great work from them at the trade table. Fremantle, bottom 4. Honestly, what have they got coming in? They're not even going to pick up Jeremy Sharp, which I think he'll get delisted, maybe. So, it doesn't look like they're going to pick him up. I think he already got delisted, so I don't know. But they're going to pick him up. That's it. What have they got to look forward to next year? They got nothing. They've got nothing. They got maybe Luke Jackson playing playing midfield with Sean Darcy. We saw how poor that was this year. Why would next year work better? I think Justin Longmuir, Ken Hinkley, they're probably the most under pressure coaches going into 2024. And I think Justin Longmuir is the most under pressure coach because Fremantle, they're no closer to a premiership than, maybe even the Gold Coast are. And imagine if the Gold Coast won a premiership before the Fremantle Dockers, or the Giants for that matter. The Giants were 1 point away from making the grand final this year, and who knows how they would have gone on grand final day, because that was a massive game against Collingwood and Brisbane. Who knows how the Giants would have gone? Imagine if Fremantle were the only team in the comp without a premiership. That is a serious reality to look at, because the Gold Coast got a great list building here. They've got Damien Hardwick going up there now. GWS, Adam Kingsley's rebuilt this team along with Toby Green. The Fremantle got nothing. I understand the frustration that Freo fans have because there's no bright sights up ahead at the moment. They've got Caleb Sarong and Brayshaw, and that's kind of it for the young talent, really. I mean, you got a couple of young guys in their defensive half who are pretty good. Obviously their defense is very solid. I agree with that. But one of their big problems, Fremantle, is kicking goals, and they just let go their best scorer. I don't know why am I more frustrated at the moment? This was, I think, a stupid move by Freo, to let him go. But for that price, that was atrocious. I'm so sorry for Fremantle fans out there. I would be so frustrated if I was them because they should have been asking for 2 first-round picks or you're not going. And they let him go for a second-round pick 34, and a future first-rounder, which, let's be honest, this year, they need something for 2024, not 2025. Where are they going to finish? I can't see them finishing out of the bottom 4 at this stage. They got nothing on their side. I think they're in a really poor spot, Fremantle. And as a club, they're basically irrelevant as a football club because they've never won a premiership. They've only made one grand final. And they don't really look like pushing for one anytime soon. You can't win a premiership without a good, solid forward line to kick, 90 to 100 plus points as an average, really. And they don't have that. Tabner's kicked 92 goals in the space of, 2020, 2021, 2022, 4 years. So basically he's averaged, 23 goals a season? As a key forward, I know he gets injured a lot, but you're going to be banking on him getting 50 plus goals. You're going to be banking on Frederick and Walters getting that 30 plus. You're banking on Brayshaw and Caleb Sarong to kick your 20 plus goals in the middle. I don't see it. I'm very bullish on Fremantle next year. I don't think they're going to be doing much at all. But before we end today's podcast, and sorry I went on for so long about Fremantle, I didn't think I was going to, but I did want to quickly talk about something about Port Adelaide. Now, there's been a lot of talk about Port Adelaide's next captain because obviously Tom Jonas has retired. This is probably going to be a little bit. But people have been talking about Ollie Wines or Connor Rozee. I'd be interested to hear what my brother says about this. Maybe he can tell me later. But Ollie Wines, I think it should be Connor Rozee in my opinion. Just because we've seen Ollie Wines take the captaincy before, even when he was a co-captain. I think it was in 2018 or 2019. And he didn't cope with it very well. He played a pretty poor season. I think that was the year as well where he did the surfing accident. My brother would have to let me know if I'm probably wrong on that. But I do think that a young leader like Connor Rozee would be good for them. I think that's I don't know if it's perfect, but I think it's a good idea to go down that route. I think this year's kind of proven that Port Adelaide kind of need their young leaders to take over now. We've kind of seen that throughout the year. Most of the time, the midfield was Butters, Rozee, and Horne-Francis anyway. Maybe even Willem Drew, who's quite young himself. So, kind of the young leaders of Port Adelaide are taking over at this stage. So, I do think it's time that maybe a Connor Rozee type does take it. A little bit surprised I haven't really talked about Zach Butters, but at the end of the day, the best player at the club isn't necessarily the best choice for a captain. We've seen that in the past. So I think they should probably go down the route of Connor Rozee. I don't think they should go with Ollie Wines, just because I think that he needs to focus on his footy, and at this stage, there's been a lot of talk about him maybe leaving. I don't think Ollie Wines will leave at the end of the trade period. I think he will stay. I kind of think those talks are kind of petered off now that Xavier Dersma wants to go to Essendon. So I think they'll kind of peter off in the end. But I do think that the next captain of Port Adelaide should be Connor Rozee. That's kind of my thoughts on it. Maybe even if my brother drops a comment in the comment section just to let us know what he thinks. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on the captaincy there. But yeah, guys, that's basically episode 33 of the podcast. Like I said, this is basically the last episode of the Boundary Riders Podcast where it's centered around footy for the year. As I said, we'll be talking more about footy we'll be talking about footy as well in the off-season Boundary Riders Podcast. But I think throughout the podcast going forward, we are going to try and get it on Spotify. I know I keep on saying that. I'm going to start getting it on Spotify. We're going to get a ring light here. We're going to try and improve everything as well throughout the off-season period like clubs do. We're going to be trying to get a ring light in here, all that sort of stuff. There will be videos every single week coming out which are AFL related, basically about the 2023 season. We are going to be doing the videos, like I said, about the trade period. Throughout the podcast, we're going to be talking a little bit about other sports. I've been looking around for some videos about some really out there sort of sports to take a look at with my brother, which I think are quite funny. And we are going to have a couple of things looking forward to in the next couple of weeks, which you guys can hopefully get on board with. We'll hopefully see. I will make sure let me know down below as well if there are topics that you would like us to talk about sports related, because that's basically what we're going to talk about. Sorry if I don't really have a educated opinion about the voice. Sorry to tell you. I don't think you care about my opinion. But anyway, it's done now anyway. But yeah, thanks for watching today's episode of the Boundary Riders Podcast, guys. Make sure to leave us a like and subscribe. And yeah, thanks for watching. But that's all from us. Thank you for watching the People's Podcast. I fucked up the ending. Don't worry about it. I'll see you all later.